we've got a choice. We can settle for a country where a few people do really, really well and everybody else struggles to get by. Or we can restore an economy where everybody gets a fair shot, everybody does their fair share.
Their fair share gets a fair shot. That just sounds fair. But Arthur Brooks, president of the American Enterprise Institute, says the president's taking from the makers and encouraging takers, and that's not fair. Star Parker agrees, though she was once a taker, and now she runs the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. So, Star, how are you a taker?
Well, I was a taker because I believe that rhetoric of the president. I believed what I call the lie of the left. It's extremely alluring, and I ended up 7 years in and out of welfare dependency, 3.5 years consistently. You know, when you think about what's happening in Greece, as you just talked about, it's already happened in our inner cities in this country. They've made these political promises they can't keep, but it's similar to a drug dealer who makes a promise after he gives away the freebies that you're going to feel good forever, and after the high comes down and you have to buy it yourself, you get pretty upset.
But some people are really in need, and it just seems fair to most Americans that we take from the rich and help them.
Those that have great need, the best thing that we can do for them is to unleash the chains of government so that we can have more philanthropy in their local communities. What has happened over time is government has become the nanny state and has made these promises that it can't keep to ensure people that they can live healthy and whole if they just stay on this plantation. And so we need any type of help services to be very local to that person, that individual, not out of Washington, D.C.
This idea of local help, Arthur, that private charities can do it. When I say that, I'm told that's cruel. The federal government has the money, needs to help.
Well, look, there are lots of things that private charities can do, and there are poor people, and there's a role for actually trying to help certain areas of poverty in this country. The problem is that the federal government, in the nanny state that it's creating, with social engineering and picking winners and losers, it goes way beyond the social safety net. Most of the money that we're spending on the social welfare state today is actually paying for middle-class people. It's equalizing outcomes. You know, when the president talks about fairness, he's not talking about just alleviating people from the worst poverty. He's talking about taking from people who've made a lot and giving it to others. He says that's fair because it is more equal.
It sounds fair,
but it's
not.
not.
The rich are absurdly rich. They barely miss it.
Indeed, and the whole idea that just because somebody doesn't miss it, it's fair to take it away. Imagine, you know, if somebody has more than somebody else, it's okay to just go and take it. That's not how Americans understand fairness. That's unfairness.
No, and also, when you talk about those that we say are in great need, those at the bottom, if we were really serious about helping them, we wouldn't have a government social safety net. What we would do is remove those barriers in their neighborhoods, all of that excessive regulation, all of that excessive taxation that is in every inner city and low-wage community across our country. Laws like minimum wage, laws like Davis-Bacon, this is what's standing in the way of people being able to thrive in this great country of ours. I think it's the barriers of government that are hurting them more so than the fact that they might need others to participate in their well-being. When you think about all of the money that's been thrown into this war on poverty over the last 50 years, the poverty rate in Black America has not changed whatsoever. It's not that we're not helping poor people on a local level.
And I just want to make a slight correction to what you said. Actually, when welfare began, the poverty rate did go down sharply for about 5 years, but then it stopped. And if you look at the chart for before when welfare began, it was already going down. Things were getting better. Government interfered with that. And, you know, this graph that we just put up is a list of all the programs in America that give handouts to people. And it's gone from 28% of GDP to 70%.
Really,
Arthur, you've written a book about the makers and takers. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, nobody wants to be called a taker, and a lot of people don't realize what's going on. But right now, almost 70% of Americans take more out of the tax system than they put in. You know, the percentage.
Well, they're the needy people.
70% of Americans. I mean, imagine, this is the richest country in the world, and 7 out of 10 Americans take more out of the system than they put into it.
What about morality? The left has won the battle of morality, it would seem. It is moral to take from the rich, and we've left out the point that when you do that, some of the rich produce less stuff and create fewer jobs. But it's the moral thing to do.
Well, part of the reason that the left has done really well in the moral debate is because the right hasn't shown up for that fight. You know, you hear a lot of people on the so-called political right, they answer moral arguments with materialistic rejoinders. They say, yeah, but the best way to get a higher GDP and fiscal balance and all this stuff is with free enterprise. And
But we
that's
have facts on that.
It is indeed true, but that's not the real reason that we care. Star Parker, who's, you know, you can't make any better arguments than she makes, has pointed out that this is the idea of the founders of this country was to build it as the greatest experiment in freedom in the history of the world. That's a moral proposition. That's not a materialistic proposition. I would want freedom even if it weren't the most efficient system because it's inherently good in and of itself. Thomas Jefferson knew it. We can't forget it.
It's inherently good because it leaves people free to pursue their own goals.
To pursue their own
That's
happiness, as a matter of fact.
And
Now,
their own
that's what they
happiness,
meant.
right.
That's what the founders meant. If you look back on it, it's really the concept of earning our success. This whole idea that when somebody gives you a handout, and social scientists have tons of data on this. I know we've done studies on this for years that show that when people receive something they didn't earn, it gives them no satisfaction at all. If you want to give somebody the pursuit of happiness, let them earn their own success. These will be the happiest people, and that's what we're taking away.
And Star, you were in the stereotype. You were the poor black welfare recipient. This is programs, and most of the people who get welfare are white, but in the eyes of the public, you're who they want to help. And you argue it was immoral to give you that money?
Yes, I would argue with Arthur Brooks that it's immoral to give me that money. And one of the reasons that the people point to an African American as the stereotype is because of the disproportionate numbers of blacks that are taking advantage of these programs.
And you climbed out of poverty, but some would say some people are helpless.
I worked my way out of poverty, and there probably are some that by no fault of their own cannot get that first rung. Those are the isolated incidents. I don't believe that these are the majority. If you really want to see how one versus the other, public versus private, takes care of the most vulnerable amongst us, then go into any public and then private homeless shelter. You will see a stark difference in who should be doing this work. You go into the public and you will think you're in a prison. You go into the private and what they do is think of everybody as not wanting to be here ever again, so they work on that individual. And there is such a difference for health and wholeness in those private shelters. So I am convinced that if the government totally removed itself from all charity work, that we will see the poor flourish in this country.
And in the charity work, they are able to say, you need help and you need to get off your rear, while government has one rule for everybody. Thank you, Star Parker.
That's the difference
and
right
Arthur
there.
Brooks.